Okay, so I was fortunate enough this Christmas, my lovely wife got me a brand new Ninja coffee station. I actually had one of their original ones that was pretty basic, but I gave up my Keurig brewer previously for it because it let me pick the size of cups I want. Had like 3 or 5 different settings. But with the big surprise, we got a brand new station here. And what's kind of interesting is getting this gift for me, which we'll cover today why it's so great, actually led to a couple different things. So on my other channel, Dad's Domain, we do a lot of motorcycles and riding with the kids, and I got a brand new bike this year. And when I bought it, I was 246 pounds. Shockingly though, Honda in the manual says that the weight limit on the bike is 220. Now nobody really pays attention to it, but it's a little disheartening to know that I was a little too chubby for it. So as I look for different dieting methods, this whole thing about intermittent fasting kind of popped in, and I was learning about it, and I was generally one who would skip breakfast and drink a couple cups of coffee with cream and sugar. And then I found out that if I were to just quit putting my cream and sugar in there, I'd be fasting for 16 hours a day. So one thing's led to another. I've lost 14 pounds, got another 12 to go to get to the weight limit. But it's honestly because of this machine that I feel like I'm pulling it off. And so that's what I want to talk about today. Why has this machine been good enough, not only to make great coffee, but it's helped pull me along and lose weight and go through the fasting with it. So if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and let's take a look at this machine. Okay, as a simplistic startup, I'm going to start with a more common situation. This is labeled a coffee brewing station, and almost everybody's going to want to make coffee with it. Now, starting off, you've got, I just ran it here, but you've got 2 different inserts. You've got a tea basket and a coffee basket. And the machine itself knows, depending on which item you put in, it'll light up whether you're doing coffee or tea on here. So it's just got a little sensor on here so that it knows what mode it's doing. So now we've got the tea mode. Now for the coffee basket, it's got a stainless steel removable filter on here. So you can do that, or you can use paper filters. Now I will tell you that previous to this, I hadn't used paper filters before. When I'm brewing just black coffee, now that I've switched to no cream and sugar, I prefer the taste of the paper filters. It makes it a little bit smoother. However, if I'm making a cold brew coffee, which we'll cover in a bit, I actually prefer the taste of the basket over the paper. It makes it a little stronger with the basket. On the tea basket has a removable filter so you can use loose leaf. Anytime I'm using tea bags, I simply put the tea bags in the basket. And on the side of the machine is a frother. So it comes right out, you froth your milk, and after the milk is frothed, this simply turns out so that you can go clean it. And finally, the machine lets you hold your coffee scoop or tea scoop. It's got the measurements for both on it right on the side here. So that's why they kind of refer to it as a coffee brewing station. It's got everything self-contained that you need. Okay, so why is this so good? Well, there's kind of a couple key things on here that make this as good as it is. The first is coming through here on the head. The water doesn't drip down from one source. The water comes down almost like a shower head so that it's evenly absorbed through your coffee grinds or your tea. But what these baskets do is these baskets actually are spring loaded with a little plunger. And so that allows these baskets to sit here, fill with water, and let your items actually soak. So the water just doesn't pass straight through. Previously, I've made cold brew coffee. I have a little container I bought on Amazon, and it takes about 24 hours in the fridge outside to make cold brew coffee. And I enjoy making my own cold brew because if you go to Starbucks, any decent sized cold brew coffee is like $4 at least. And so when I saw that this had a cold brew function on here, I'm like, okay, that's really interesting because my previous one had an over ice. Okay, so the over the ice function that this one has and all the Ninja coffee stations have had, what it does is it brews the coffee hot, you pour it over ice, and it just doesn't brew as much. It makes for a stronger batch of coffee, and by the time it dilutes with the ice, hey, there you go, pretty simple. Cold brew does is completely different. Now for reference, I typically use a 16 to 20 ounce tumbler. That's my most common way. And so if I set this to a cold brew function, what it does is it brews in a small batch of water at a much lower temperature. And it'll let the water sit in here, soak for a few minutes, and then it lets a little water out into the tumbler. Then it does another batch again. So it keeps steeping low amounts of coffee at a low temperature in here. Now I will tell you, compared to the cold brew I've done before that takes 24 hours in a fridge, this is 90 to 95% as good using the same beans. And so as an example, if I'm making a hot brew coffee from the tumbler, I'll do about 2.5 scoops of grinds. On the cold brew, I use 4 scoops of the grinds to get the flavor I want, and I'm using the metal filter, not the paper. But that was really when it just kind of blew my mind that this works incredibly well. So previously, before starting this video, I did a couple temperature tests on here. And when the coffee is being brewed, the coffee comes through and is measured in the basket at about 198, 200 degrees. When the cold brew comes through, it's down to about 138 degrees. So it's a much, much lower difference. I don't want to get too distracted on here, but when you brew coffee hot, it releases some extra acids and stuff, and that's where some of the bitterness can come from, and a lot of us like that flavor. But if you're looking for a smoother cup of coffee, the cold brew doesn't bring out the acids. And so normally in a fridge, it's really cold, probably 38, 40 degrees. It takes a while to release the flavors. So at that little bit higher temperature, but without releasing the acids, you get the cold brew here in about 10 to 15 minutes. Okay, so I got the unit with the glass carafe, which I really like because it's got the warming plate down here. And since I like to drink the tumblers, 2 tumblers is almost exactly equal to half a carafe. So when I brew a cup of coffee on here, this will by default keep it warm for 2 hours, which is perfect for me. And I believe you can adjust it in the manual to set it up to 4 hours on here. And so I'll brew 2 cups of coffee. Okay, so now I've taken care of my mornings. Drink 2 cups of coffee, I'm pretty good. I've always skipped breakfast. Now come lunchtime, hey, I just fasted 16 to 18 hours. But where I've always struggled before a lot is I like to snack in the evenings. I need to feel like I'm eating something. Now I'm trying to quit eating at 7 o'clock at night, and that's horrible. And that's really where the tea function has come in. So on here, we have 5 different types of tea. It has herbal teas, black teas, oolong, white, and green. I don't have a lot of history with tea. I know that making a cup of tea at night tastes really good for me, and it helps me get through that fasting before bed. But for those of you who know your teas, let's take a look at how the machine reacts to each type. Now, what I haven't fully covered yet is that over here on the side of the machine, you have 5 different settings as well. Classic, rich, over ice, cold brew, and specialty. Now, doing the classic tea mode on herbal, it brews that in 3 minutes and 55 seconds doing a tumbler size. However, if you set it to rich, it takes 7 minutes and 22 seconds. And so what it's doing is letting the tea steep in the basket much longer on the rich setting, and that's actually where I prefer it. So these settings are doing something. But what I did after that is I only did the rich setting on the herbal once. So as a comparison, we'll go through the classic settings for the rest of the teas. So we have herbal at 198 and 3 minutes and 55 seconds. Black tea came in at 190 degrees and 5 minutes and 10 seconds. Now there was something else different though about black versus herbal. With the herbal, it let the water sit here and soak, and as it released the tea near the end, it also flushed a little bit more hot water over it. With the black, it steeped the water for a while, poured some out, then it poured some more water in the basket and let that steep. So it went through 2 different steep cycles. So it actually approached the tea with different temperatures and a different method. Moving on to oolong, I had 192 degrees. That took 6 minutes and 18 seconds. But again, instead of steeping it 2 times, it steeped it 3 times. So it went through 3 different smaller batches of water. Moving on to white tea, we had a temperature of 183 degrees, 5 minutes and 35 seconds, and it steeped it twice, much like it did the black tea. Finally, we have our green tea, 178 degrees, 2 steep settings, 3 minutes, 30 seconds. So there's quite a bit of range between each setting on here, and then the rich versus classic would have another. Now, furthermore on here, you've got over ice and cold brew for the tea as well. I don't know a lot about tea on here, so I'm just learning. Did a little bit of Google searching, and I heard that people like green and oolong a lot for cold brew. So what I found out is by doing the over the ice setting for oolong, it pulled in about the same temperature, which makes sense. It's gonna steep the tea at the same amount, a little bit less because you're going over ice. But the big difference here, cold brew oolong was down 40 degrees down to 147 degrees, and it took 10 minutes and 45 seconds. So much like the coffee, it let the tea sit in the basket for a much longer period of time. Green tea, again, we were originally at 178 degrees. We were down to 172 for the cold brew, and we were up from 3 minutes and 30 seconds up to 5 minutes. So as you can see on here, there are programmed in functions for every type of tea and every mode. Everything has its own programmed function. So they've gone through here for both coffee and tea and created lots of different functions. Okay, so hopefully you found this video beneficial, and if you've been on the fence about picking one of these up, I highly recommend you do so. They are a great way to get it, and at $200 retail price, not on sale, when you factor in how cheap it is to make great coffee at home compared to going to Starbucks or other places, this pays for itself really fast. Okay, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps out. Hit the like button. And if you have any questions about it, go ahead and hit in the comment. If you have any questions about the machine, go ahead and put those in the comments below and I'll be sure to respond. And I'll also put a link where you can find this unit as well. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching.